Okay, we're going to start this series with Sukkah Daf Beis Amid Aleph, and we'll start with the Mishnah. Rather than learning the Mishnah inside the Gemara, I think it would be a good idea to start with the Mishnah in Mishnayos, and so I'm going to switch over here to, we have Mishna Sukkah, and it's available on Hebrew Wikisource. They have all of it there. And so let's just take a look at this Mishnah. Sukkah shigivol mal me'asrim amma psula. If a sukkah is bigger than 20 amos, 20 cubits, it's pasul. And Rabbi Yehuda Machshir, he says it is kosher. So that's the first of possible psuls. V'shein gavasar tfachim, if it's not as high as 10 hand breadths. V'shein l'shal shtefanos, if it doesn't have 3 walls. V'shechamasam merubim tzilasa, or it has more sun than shade, so then psula. Now, in the Mishnayos, it actually continues over here. And if you look at the Gemara, so here we have the Gemara, so we actually stop over here, and we start with the Gemara. In early printings, I forget about printings, in early manuscripts of Gemaras, so they had all of the Mishnayos in the beginning, and then they had afterwards all of the Gemara. And so later on they started putting the Gemara around the Mishnayos, and they chopped up the Mishnah into appropriate chunks. But still, you could consider this over here as one Mishnah. At least here's a different division in which it actually continues here with other things that would make a sukkah invalid. So sukkah yeshana, an old sukkah, Beis Shammai posel Beis Hillel machshirin. Beis Shammai says it's pasul, Beis Hillel says it's kosher. Ve'ezu sukkah yeshana. Then they give a definition of an old sukkah: anything that was made kodem l'chag shloshim yom, aval imasal l'shem chag. But if you made it for the sake of chag means sukkos. Afilu mitchilas hashana ksher, even from the beginning of the year, it's kosher. Still, we're going to focus over here on this first part, and let's look back at the Gemara now. And so we have this Mishnah here with different things that would make a sukkah pasul or kosher. And the Gemara immediately contrasts this Mishnah with the Mishnah in Eruvin, Daf Beis Amid Beis. Tanan Hasam, Tanan means the Mishnah, so Tanan Hasam we learn over there in the Mishnah. Mavli Shu Gava Me'asrim Amma, an alleyway. They mean the Lechi and Korah. There's a vertical pole and a cross beam. Put it in an alleyway to show where the end of it, is in terms of carrying on Shabbos. So mavli shu gava me'asrim amma. If that mavli is greater than 20 amos, so you should make it smaller. You should lower that korah, the lechi v'korah. And Rabbi Yehuda omer eino tzarech. And Rabbi Yehuda says you don't need to. And that's the only thing that they cite from that Mishnah there. And you might think that that's just the entirety of the Mishnah, and nothing else is relevant. Actually, it pays when the Gemara cites something to look it up inside. So we're going to look now at the Gemara in Eruvin, Daf Beis Amid Aleph, and here we go, Mavli. So here we go. Mavli shu gava l'mal me'asrim amma yimait. If this mavli is greater than 20 amos, you should make it smaller. And Rabbi Yehuda omer eino tzarech, you don't need to. V'harachav me'aser amos yimait. And if it's wider, the opening there to the mavli is greater than 20 amos, and it went from 10 amos, you should also make it smaller. But if it has the form of a doorway, Here you see, here's the mavoi, and this is greater than 20 amos, but it has over here a pole and a line across over here to make the form of a doorway. So then, ein tzarich lama, you don't need to make it smaller. So a lot of this, it's not just this one statement in Eruvin, but it's the whole Mishna seems to be patterned after the same pattern. And in fact, we even start out with a dispute between the Tana Kama, an unnamed simple statement over here that you need that this is invalid, so you need to make it smaller. You have to lower it. And you have Rabbi Yehuda who says Eino Tzarich, and compare that to the Gemara here in Sukkah, where the same thing occurs. So it's a natural thing to try to compare or contrast them. So the Gemara asks that Tnan Hasam Avishu Me'asrim Ama Yimait and Rabbi Yehuda Me'ino Tzarich. So Mishna Gabe Sukkah Disnei Psula. Why by Sukkah did it just say Psula? It's invalid. Mishna Gabe Mavui Disnei Takanta. And by Mavui they said how to fix it. Now this is an analysis of the structure and the language of the Mishnah. It's anonymous. I would say that this is the Stamma de Gemara, the unnamed, anonymous narrative voice of the Mishnah. Often we would say that this was written by the Stamayim, by the Savoraim. You don't see it. You don't see it attributed to any named Amora. Maybe you could say Eruvin or Rav Ashi wrote it, but the point is there's this specific stylistic attributes, the anonymous nature of it, certain language like Ibayas Ema, that tells us that it's the Stamma de Gemara, and it's useful to just identify that, so we've hereby identified it. So the Gemara gives gives two possible answers. One is that Mavoi d'Rabbanan Tnei Takanta, since Mavoi, the whole idea of having to put in this Lachi V'Korah at the entrance to a Mavoi is a rabbinic enactment, so Tnei Takanta, it teaches how to fix it. And what does that mean? You take a look at Rashi, take a look at Tosfos, they give different answers explaining why this should make a difference, why you would say Psula by a Daraisa, and why you would say how to fix it by a D'Rabbanan. V'bayasem, and if you want, I'll tell you another reason, but Daraisa Nami Tnei Takanta, even by the Oraisa, by biblical laws in the Mishnah, we would still say how to fix it. Miu Sukkah dinefishe milasa, that it has a lot of different laws. Pasuk v'tani psula, it just simply states that it's pasul. But mavayilo nafish milei, it doesn't have a lot of different laws. Tnei takanta, we say how to fix it. Now, what does that mean? That Mavoi has a lot of laws. That Sukkah has a lot of laws, and Mavoi doesn't have a lot of laws. So many people could be excused from thinking that, look, Sukkah has so many different laws. This would be if they didn't see the Mishnah in Eruvin, and they were just relying on the Gemara's citation of it. So, Tanan Hasam, you might so you may think that's the only law that it says there. So then you could just say you might. But here you have a whole bunch of different laws. You have Lamal Me'asrim Amma, and She'ena Gavoa Asar Tzvachim, and She'en La Shalosh Tefanos, and Shecham Asam Rub Mitzilasa. So you might think that there's so many different laws, for some reason there, and maybe for each one you'd have to say how to fix it, so it's not going to bother and it's going to say psula. But that's actually, it's not precisely right, because if you look back in Eruvin over here, we saw that we have almost the same amount of laws here. L'mal me'esrim amma, and so it doesn't say if it's too small as the next one. But Rachav me'eser, if there's a gap that's greater than 10 amos, or it does, if well, those are, I suppose, only two laws, but still there are multiple details, and even if you look in other Mishnayos, you also find other details about how wide the cover needs to be, and so on and so forth. So I don't think it's precisely that, and that way you could perhaps better understand Rashi. So let's just we'll scroll over here. So Sukkah de Nevishe Milasa. So first of all, it says Mavli lo nafish milei. He says ba'osa Mishna. In that Mishnah, it doesn't have a lot of different laws. Okay, so perhaps that's a reason for excluding. This is a reason for saying ba'osa Mishnah that you're not including other Mishnayos. But let's see how we define Sukkah de Nefishe Milsa. Ve'ein domin tiknosehem zo lezo. They're different. So in the Mishnah and Eruvin, so they were both Yemait. If the Mavli was bigger than 20 amos, so Yemait, and if the entrance was greater than 10 amos, so Yemait. So it was always the same fix. But here you would have to Lashanos Halashon will call takana de takana. Kegon begavha Yemait, Kshena gava yagbiha, Veshen Lashal Shvanos Yasala Allah, Veshacham Meruba Yosef Schach. So therefore, it simply said psuba. So those are two possible reasons why one is daraisa and one is that it has a lot of different details that would make it possible within the same Mishnah. Okay, let's maybe talk a little bit about the girsa in the Mishnah. So first of all, this word shlosha. It's supposed to be shalosh, just agreement of gender. So defanos is feminine, so it should then be shalosh. How come you would end up with shlosha? Probably somewhere along the line, shalosh was written as gimel, and then somebody incorrectly, some scribe incorrectly expanded it. So it was expanded incorrectly into shlosha. So that's just one. When you see these things, it's nice to explain them a little bit. And here's another point that's interesting. Look at the way that they cite the Mishnah in Eruvin. Tanan Hasam, Mavli Shu Gavoa Me Esrim Amma. Note there's a word missing, Me Esrim. If you look at the Masoros Hashas, I think they, you see over here, there's a little hey. So if we look at the Masoros Hashas, let's drag this over. Here we go. Here it says Sarach Lomar Lemala Me Esrim. So we should really expand that a little bit. We should add the word Lemala over here. Mavli Shugva Lemala Me Esrim Amma. And in fact, if you look at the Gemara, the Mishnah actually in Eruvin, you see we say Mavli Shu Gava Lemala Me Esrim Amma. Okay, so just one possible second thought about this. If you look at Rabbeinu Hananel, let me drag this over to Rabbeinu Hananel and let's see how he cites this Mishnah. Here, I'll just blow it up a bit. And okay, so here we go. Sukkah shi gavoa me esrim amma. So even our Mishnah, where he had Sukkah shi gavoa lemala me esrim amma, he doesn't seem to have the word lemala. V'tanan be'eruvin mavi shi gavoa me esrim amma. It looks like also when he's citing that Mishnah I mean, he's citing the Gemara, but he's citing the Mishnah, and he doesn't have the word limala between gavoa and me'asrim. And it's not really necessary if you think about it. A sukkah, which is gavoa, which is taller than, and then me, more than esrim amma, so you don't really need the word limala there. So whether it was original or whether it's not, I don't know. Something to think about. Look at the manuscript evidence. But let's say Rabbeinu Chananel here. And see over here, Rabbeinu Chananel in Eruvin also, it says Mavoi Shu Gavoa Me'asrim Amma Yemait. But it doesn't say Lamala. So it seems to be consistent. And look over here in the way that Tosfos cites it. He also says Mavoi Shu Gavoa Me'asrim Amma Yemait. If we can trust the Dibur HaMaschil of Tosfos, so he also doesn't have the word Limala over here. So which one it is? It's a good question, but it looks like Rishonim didn't have the word Limala, and there's a good argument in favor of that. If you look in the Tosefta, at least in the version that we have in front of us, it does say Limala by Succah. So, but it's something to consider.